Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. On behalf of SES Standards and Assurance Systems, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar. Before we dive into our presentation on the introduction to the certification standard for responsible advanced chemical molecular recycling, I'd like to take a moment to update all of you on our event platform, GoToWebinar, and how to engage with the speakers during the webinar. To avoid any unnecessary background noises during the presentation, all attendees have been muted, and this will remain a one-way presentation for the duration of the event. If you would like to ask a question, please go to the questions section in the control panel on the upper right-hand side of your webinar console. Once you submit your question, it will be sent to our team for review. This is a 30-minute presentation, so we will not be answering any questions live today, but questions will be responded to after the event via email. Today's presentation is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be made available to all registrants and attendees after the conclusion of the webinar. We also encourage you to provide your feedback on the webinar in a quick survey that will be included at the end of this presentation. And with that being said, here is Victoria Norman to start the introduction to the certification standard for responsible advanced chemical molecular recycling. Victoria?
Thank you, Tom, and thank you for those housekeeping notes. Welcome everyone to our webinar. We are introducing a certification standard for responsible advanced chemical molecular recycling. So I'll start by addressing the title. It is a mouthful, so we will be referring to chemical recycling as shorthand throughout this presentation. So before we get going, a little bit about us. My name is Victoria Norman. I am the Executive Director of SES Standards, and I will say a few words about the organization in the next slide. I've been with SES for over 10 years. I used to be at SES Global Services in the Quality Assurance Department. For those of you on the webinar who know me, it'll be no surprise that I am a generalist. I know a little bit about a lot of different things, but my niche field of expertise really lays in sustainability standards, assurance, certification systems, and traceability chain of custody. Rachel, if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure, thanks, Victoria. My name is Rachel Boothby-Henschel, and I'm a Senior Standards Associate at SES Standards. I have a doctorate in People Environment Geography, and I've worked in standard development in multiple industries, from coffee and dairy to minerals and recycling. I also have public sector experience in program oversight and regulatory compliance. And I'm really excited to share the standard that we've developed with you today, and looking forward to your input during our public consultation. More to come on this.
Thank you, Rachel. So allow me to introduce SES Standards and Assurance Systems. We are an ANSI accredited standard development body. We were founded by SES Global Services, the third-party verification and certification body, to house all standards that historically were developed by SES Global Services. And we lead all new standard development work. We develop, revise, and maintain leadership standards that drive responsible purchasing decisions, sustainable development, and a circular economy. Our standards are all publicly available, free of charge, on our website. And we also work on behalf of clients to develop proprietary sustainability standards, responsible sourcing programs, and we also help manage certification schemes on their behalf. So I'll hand things back on to Rachel to get us started.
Great. Today, we'll be introducing the Responsible Advanced Chemical Molecular Recycling Standard, also known as the Responsible Chemical Recycling Standard. We'll go over the standard structure and requirements and provide an overview of the certification process. We will hand the mic over to several stewards whose industry knowledge and experience has been invaluable to the development of this standard, and they'll share their thoughts on the importance of responsible chemical recycling and this standard in particular. Before we wrap up, we'll share some time-sensitive information about the public consultation that's currently underway and how you can be involved. So chemical recycling refers to technologies that convert waste streams like organics, plastics, and other engineered products back into basic chemical building blocks. These can then be used to make new virgin-like plastics and other products. Chemical recycling complements mechanical recycling and other recycling technologies to implement a sustainable circular economy. It diverts material from landfill incineration or environmental pollution. So this standard aims to establish a credible basis for the independent assessment and certification of the responsible production of chemically recycled materials. It considers the processes, materials, and environmental and social impacts involved in chemical recycling, and it brings transparency to chemical recycling operations. The development of the standard was initiated by the Ocean Plastics Leadership Network following the Responsible Production Guidelines to Ensure Progressive Advanced Chemical Molecular Recycling Operations White Paper, which was published in May 2024 by the US Plastics Pact. The standard was developed with the support, input, feedback, and direction of chemical recyclers, supply chain actors, brands, and civil society. A little bit about the scope. This is a voluntary certification applicable to chemical recyclers worldwide that are seeking to demonstrate their commitment to implementing responsible recycling practices. It's primarily applicable to recyclers handling polymers like plastics, textiles, and elastomers, using recycling technologies such as pyrolysis, solvolysis, depolymerization, and gasification. It's important to note that for this standard, the recycler itself is the certificate holder, so we're not looking at recycling all the way down to a pellet. And the intention is to create a standard that is technology agnostic while recognizing that chemical recycling is primarily used for plastics. And the criteria may be applicable to the processing unit, site, or organization, depending on the topic area and the specific structure of the chemical recycler, so whether it's a standalone or fully integrated facility. And I will pass things back over to Victoria.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm going to get us started on the standard structure and the requirements, so really the meat of the topic. So as you can see from this beautiful table, the requirements of the standard are split in 5 main sections. The first section are the general requirements that cover the requirement to have a management system and all operational permits, which really ensures consistent delivery of products that meet customer and regulatory requirements. It also includes the requirement for stakeholder mapping that enables awareness of interested parties. Then we have a section on operations and transparency. And that section covers one of the hottest topics of the moment, certainly in my life, maybe in yours too, which is chain of custody and mass balance. And that's really to ensure traceability of inputs and outputs. This section also addresses feedstock sources to demonstrate a commitment to processing hard to recycle materials to prevent such materials from entering the environment. So I'm going to step away from this table for just a second to walk you through 2 clauses of the operations and transparency section that illustrate this. So in line with the objectives to bring transparency to chemical recycling, all chemical recyclers who get certified to this standard will be required to disclose the chain of custody model that they use. So that can be, identity preserved, segregation, controlled blending. It can be mass balance rolling average method, or it can be mass balance credit method. And we've added a little bit more there, where if a recycler is using the mass balance credit method, further disclosure is going to be required regarding the attribution method. And so we've defined 2 attribution methods. One is energy use attribution, which some of you might think of as free attribution. And the other is material to material attribution, which some of you might think of as fuel use exempt. Both of these attribution methods are defined in the standard. And we welcome your review and comments on those. And so the idea is that whatever the approach the chemical recycler is taking to chain of custody is fine. We don't want to be prescriptive or stop some operations using one type of mass balance versus another. The goal truly is to communicate transparently on what is being done. The next thing I wanted to mention is about feedstocks. And so for those who are familiar with chemical recycling, which I'm assuming is most of you on this webinar, the superpower of chemical recycling really lays in its ability to recycle materials that traditionally cannot be recycled in the current systems that we have. And so to ensure this continues to be leveraged by chemical recyclers, the standard requires that they prioritize the sourcing and recycling of hard to recycle materials. That really anchors chemical recycling as a complementary technology in our collective recycling toolkit. So coming back to our table, After the operations and transparency section, we have the section on environmental impacts. This section starts with requiring a public commitment to plan to reduce environmental impacts, and then dives into specific impacts in particular. The social impacts, equity, and human rights section begin with requiring a human rights policy and a public commitment to respecting human rights, and then delves into stakeholder engagement and community development. The final section of the standard, section 8, is on claims and labeling, specifying what a certificate holder can and cannot say. And one interesting thing about this standard is how it's been structured. We created threshold levels. The idea is that not all chemical recyclers are at the same level of maturity. And so providing a stepwise approach to certification seemed like a good idea to make this standard accessible. So what we did is create a core level of certification. And so all mandatory indicators are categorized as core. Those are the indicators that any recycler needs to be in compliance with to get certified. Then we have plus indicators that recognize performance, encourage continuous improvement, and provide a pathway to better performance. A recycler would have to meet all of the applicable core requirements and all of the applicable plus requirements to be certified at the plus level. And then lastly, in the last line of the table on the screen, we propose trailblazer indicators. Those promote best practices in different categories, so risk assurance, transparency and disclosure, water stewardship, zero waste, and social impact. A recycler will need to meet all of the requirements within a trailblazer category to earn that trailblazer recognition, meaning if you wanted to be a social impact trailblazer, you would have to meet all of the social impact trailblazer indicators, but there is no requirement to meet all trailblazer categories. So it really allows a user to pick and choose certain categories that they want to be additionally performant in. So if we think of the core and plus structure, it's particularly relevant in the environmental and social impact sections of the standard. So I'm going to go through those in the next couple of slides. So as you can see on this slide, in the environmental section, at the core level, it'll be a requirement, no matter what, for a chemical recycler to measure and track their impacts, as well as conduct a cradle-to-gate LCA for one impact category only, climate change. But then to get the plus certification, a recycler will be required to demonstrate improvement, meaning reduction in their impacts, as well as conduct additional LCA work for extra impact categories, including freshwater eutrophication, marine eutrophication, acidification, and energy resources. So clearly you can see here that there's a progression from measuring and tracking at the baseline and then improving that is reflected in the certification level. And the idea here is really, again, to make the standard accessible and provide a clear pathway to improvement. Similarly, in the social impacts, equity, and human rights section, the core indicators require developing and implementing a community engagement plan, a community development plan, workforce development plan, and an occupational health and safety program, whereas the plus indicator goes beyond that and integrates reporting on the recycler's performance. So again, really illustrating the idea of those core and plus indicators and creating a pathway for continuous improvement. So I'm quickly going to go over the certification process that we are proposing, and then I want to hand things back off to Rachel to hear from our guests today. So the standard is meant to increase transparency, promote responsible practices, but as I've mentioned, it's really fundamental that it be accessible as well. So what we're proposing is a 3-year certification cycle with annual surveillance audits, meaning there's a touch point each year with a recertification audit every 3 years, and to also maintain a validity of 3 years for the baseline data, acknowledging that it's actually very time and resource intensive to recalculate the baseline every year. So unless there have been major changes in processes, then that baseline data can be valid for the duration of the certificate up to 3 years. Also, we considered the fact that chemical recyclers are not new to voluntary sustainability schemes. And most organizations hold some sort of voluntary certification related to environmental stewardship or social responsibility anyway. And so the idea was to create a system where they can leverage data collected for other certification programs to demonstrate conformity with this standard. So by that, we don't mean that there's direct recognition of other schemes, rather that a lot of the work that's done to meet, for example, ISCC certification can be redirected or repackaged to meet the requirements of this standard. And so with this said, and I know it was a lot of information, I'm going to hand it over to Rachel, Jessica, Omar, and Julia.
Thank you so much, Victoria. So we've been really fortunate to have companies like Altera, Eastman, and LyondellBasell help with the development of this standard. They provided valuable technical and industry expertise guiding the standard so far. So Victoria, I'll invite you to please stop sharing the slides. And I'll ask all three to join us on camera, which you already are, thank you so much, to answer a few questions and impart words of wisdom. So first, a brief round of introductions. We have joining us today, Jessica Albert, Director of Sustainability Strategy and Integration at LyondellBasell, Julia Farber, Senior Strategic Manager of Circular Economy and Global Standards Lead at Eastman, and Omar Terry, Head of Public Affairs at Altera. So thank you all so much for joining us today. Jessica, our first question is directed at you. What is the value of chemical recycling to society?
Thanks, Rachel. I'm happy to be here. So chemical recycling delivers value to society in multiple levels: environmental, social, and economic. So it helps close the loop on plastic use and supports the transition to a circular and low carbon economy. So from an environmental perspective, chemical recycling converts mixed and these hard to recycle plastics that would otherwise be landfilled or incinerated, and then brings them back into valuable feedstocks, allowing plastics to be recycled again and again, helping to reduce plastic waste and reducing the use of new raw materials. And from a societal perspective, chemical recycling supports climate and waste reduction goals. And it complements, as she noted earlier, complements mechanical recycling and ensuring more types of plastic waste can be reintegrated into the economy rather than discarded. And then moreover, by using these famous, super popular certified mass balance accounting systems, chemical recycling supports transparency and traceability of that recycled content across these complex supply chains. And finally, from an economic perspective, chemical recycling strengthens resource security and turns these really hard to recycle plastic waste streams into raw materials that then feed existing assets such as crackers. It also helps sustain high value jobs, supports investment in innovation and infrastructure, and enables the use of recycled content polymers in new markets. As you can see, chemical recycling is a critical tool for society to help support the transition to a circular and low carbon economy.
Rachel, you're muted.
Thank you, Victoria. I was just saying thank you so much, Jessica. That's very helpful. Julia, our next question is for you. What does responsible chemical recycling mean?
Thank you so much. What a great question. Well, first of all, we just want to say we're really excited about this standard. As Victoria mentioned, the standard really reflects the main elements of what it means to responsibly handle and recycle materials. It's a holistic approach. It includes transparency on our efforts, building relationships with local communities, and most importantly, managing the operations of the facilities in the most effective and sustainable manner. This means it's important to assure that we're handling material appropriately, safely protecting our employees and the community and our environment, and removing any contaminants or non-target materials. When we do that, we want to make sure we manage those materials also correctly. But as we're processing the materials that we do want to recycle, we want to manage those correctly with the emissions, making sure that we're limiting that as much as possible while actually recovering and recycling as much material as possible to cycle it back through the economy. Finally, it's really important to communicate what we've done to our value chain and to our community. And with the standard, that's going to be something we can accomplish. As a group, it is a great opportunity for us to demonstrate our commitments to responsible sourcing and responsible handling of this material. We know so many people are so interested in making sure that we are able to capture plastic and keep it out of the land, out of the water, and out of our bodies. That is our goal, is to really help initiate and expand the circular economy by adding to the infrastructure that exists today. We really think that without this sort of technology, we won't be able to hit our long-term climate and global environmental and health goals. And we're looking forward to seeing how this certification program can help provide some of the transparency that's desired to ensure that we are really making the right kinds of investments so that we can be responsible stewards of this place that we all call home. So that's really what we're looking forward to, and we really appreciate your time here today.
Thanks, Julia. I think that leads really well into our last question, which is for Omar. Can you please share with us your thoughts on why have a responsible chemical recycling standard?
Thank you so much for having me today, Rachel. The reason why we need a sustainable standard is because of three things: environmental assurance, transparency and trust, and circular economy support. First, on environmental assurance, consumers are increasingly concerned about the environmental impact of the products they buy. A sustainable standard ensures that chemical recycling processes, 1, minimize greenhouse gas emissions, 2, avoid harmful byproducts, and 3, use energy efficiently. This gives consumers confidence that the recycling process is genuinely beneficial and not just greenwashing. Secondly, and Victoria touched on this earlier in the webinar, transparency and trust is paramount. Standards provide transparency about how materials are sourced, processed, and reused. When consumers see a certified label or standard, they can trust that the product meets rigorous sustainability criteria, which influences purchasing decisions. Finally, circular economy support. We, 3 companies and all of those companies involved in this standard development are in the business of closing the loop when it comes to plastic waste in the environment. So consumers who want to support a circular economy need assurance that the products they buy are part of a closed loop system. A standard helps verify that recycled materials are re-entering the supply chain effectively and sustainably.
Thank you, Omar, and thanks to all 3 of you for being here today and for all your help over the past months. We really appreciate that you think developing this standard is important and valuable, which is why you've shared your time and expertise with us. And this is the perfect segue to introduce our public consultation. So Victoria, can you please share the slides again? And our stewards, you may go off camera. As of October 29, 2025, the standard is undergoing a public consultation. Until December 1st, 2025, we are seeking comments from the public on the draft standard we've introduced today. So let's go over some information on where to access the draft and how you can share your feedback. You can access the draft standard and comment form through our website at scsstandards.org. So you can simply navigate to our standards library on the bottom right of the page, where you will find the draft responsible chemical recycling standard listed with our other standards. You can also navigate directly to the Responsible Chemical Recycling Standard webpage using the link at the bottom of the screen. And here you will find the draft standard as well as the public comment form, which is available for download. Just a brief introduction, the public comment form is an Excel document that invites the reviewer to comment on specific lines, clauses, or paragraphs in the draft standard. So if you have a proposed change or resolution already in mind, there's a column to share this suggestion. And there's also a tab with instructions for how to fill out the comment form. Please return the completed comment form to standards@scsstandards.org by the end of the public consultation on December 1st, 2025. And of course, don't hesitate to reach out to us with any questions. Back to you, Victoria.
Thank you so much, Rachel, and thank you, Jessica, Omar, and Julia for joining us today. And thank you all for attending this webinar. I hope the presentation was helpful, and we really do look forward to receiving your comments, the good, the bad, and the ugly, by December 1st. Wishing you all a fantastic day, and thanks again for joining us.